On today, we unveil another game based on the Quake 2 engine.
Kimberly, come in. Are you okay?
We got the power.
You are now listening to Retro Radio.
Welcome to another edition of Retro Radio, your only comprehensive online source for classic, arcade, and computer gaming emulation news and information. I'm Shane R. Monroe, your host. Welcome to the program. Well, folks, it's been a long time since we've had an episode of Retro Radio. I'd like to start off the episode by telling you why. As most of you already know that are following in the IRC channels or read Monroe World fairly regularly, you'll know that I'm moving. Currently, I live in Washington State, and I am relocating to Arizona, Phoenix area, for a new job, working along with Sniper75, or MCP as he's known on IRC. We'll be working together, and chances are you'll see a lot more cross-postings between Snipercade and Monroe World. Of course, that means a very large move, a change of jobs, and everything else you can possibly imagine, and then some, that I've been going through over the last month. We're set to move in a few days, so we're lucky to get this episode out. The Retro Radio CD-ROM has also been keeping me pretty busy, trying to get that all tidied up and working for you. Anyway, I'd like to start off before we get into the rant session of this show, which, that's what makes Retro Radio Retro Radio. I'd like to take a minute to apologize to the MAME team. There have been a lot of times in the last few shows, in the last few months that, well, I've been less than generous with the MAME team. Not giving them enough coverage and sort of, kind of talking them down a little bit, and I feel that an apology's in order. Over the last few releases of MAME, there have been a lot of bug fixes, a lot of fixes, things that I have been ranting about, like collision detection in front line and, APB not working. Instead of, nailing down a few more Neo Geo games, why they've taken the time and gone back and fixed those. And I want to just, for one, be one of the first people to say I'm sorry I came down hard on you, and I really appreciate that you've gone back and taken care of some of these old obligations, if you will. And we're going to talk more about MAME when we do the emulation update here in a few minutes. But this episode, I want to talk about camaraderie. It seems these days that there is no camaraderie anymore amongst the emulation scene. In fact, it's getting quite bad. There have been small examples of it floating around IRC and around websites for some time. The incessant picking and slamming of your fellow emulation fans and people who are working on emulators. But it seems as of late that it's almost gone overboard. We've had some spoof sites, and their message boards are filling up with hate messages and hate mail and the assassin emulator this and this guy that, and, it kind of makes me sick. When the MAME channel on IRC got taken over, we moved the classic emulation guys to the classic EMU channel, which, for the most part, most people who weren't, real big MAME heads and who weren't part of some sort of weird elite fraternity of emulation fans, and I can't even put my finger on it. These aren't, PlayStation Neo Geo freaks. They're just regular people, but they seem to be part of this unwritten clan that just, can't seem to get along with the rest of society. One individual in particular left Classic EMU because of some fight that went over on another channel. We've had sites pulled down, threats made to sites, all this other crap. It's like civil war, and it seems completely unnecessary. We have enough people to fight. We have enough opposition to emulation. For God's sake, if somebody wants to write a PlayStation emulator like I care, for God's sakes, let him do it. Stop giving him crap. When it turns out to be a hoax, own his stupid ass. But until then, give him the benefit of the doubt and give him a little support. How many emulators like Sparkade wouldn't have made it if there hadn't been such a great support from the emulation community? There's no reason at all to slam on your emulation brothers. Now, unless they deserve it. If it turns out that this assassin emulator is some sort of PlayStation hoax, then yeah, feel free. blow his ass out of the water if you like. But until then, cut the guy a break. He's trying to contribute, which is more than I can say, for a better portion of the emulation network, who takes and takes and takes and takes, and then instead of giving back, they either take some more or they turn around and slam people. Come on, you guys. Let's have a little bit of camaraderie here. Let's have a little bit of a little bit of fellowship going on here. I don't want to start talking in tongues and stuff, but it seems crazy that we have to go after each other. The once good teams that have been out there have broken up because of this emulation fighting going on. I don't want to see the whole emulation scene fall apart because we're all after each other's throats. Doesn't seem right, people. I'm not going to carry on and on about this particular rant, but if you look around, you're seeing the scene destroying itself. And I know this may sound melodramatic, it may sound a little overboard, but it's out there. Go look at the message boards. Go look at the posts on big news sites. Go and see for yourself what's happening out there, and then see how you can make a difference and help out. That's about the end of my ranting for today. I can't get too juiced up into it. I'm tired and stressed from this move. But let's go ahead and move on to the emulation update. Now, there's not a lot to report here, unfortunately. Retrocade has been fairly quiet. Most of the retro teams seem to have their own lives now. And some of the major players apparently have gotten girlfriends, so you can write them off for a while. But anyway, Retrocade, there is a Windows version, of course, as everybody knows, in development. And of the good thing about that is there's actually an alpha, or late alpha, early beta, that the Retrocade beta team may get a chance to take a look at, including yours truly. And we'll get a chance to review it and let you guys know. And if there's no major bugs, there's nothing that's going to pull your system down, they may even release it publicly. And that'd be nice, because a lot of us are waiting patiently for Windows versions, those of us who have, like G200 cards that have terrible Visa modes. So that's a big plus. They did add Ladybug to the array of games, and they are rewriting the Z80 core, which should speed some games up and fix some glaring bugs that have existed in some games, bugs you probably don't even think of or know about. I'm snarfing some candy corn here, people, if it sounds like I'm eating. I've got to keep my sugar level up. Other things in Retrocade, it's been slow on the mailing list, I'll tell you that. Basically, people got to start fights on the mailing list to get any kind of mail going on. Before I get into MAME, which has quite a bit to update about, I'd like to tell you about this thing called Scorched Tanks. Those of you from Amiga land know exactly what I'm talking about. Those of you in PC land may have known Scorched Tank's predecessor called Scorched Earth, which apparently got a lot of widespread play. But I'll tell you, the differences between Scorched Scorched Earth and Scorched Tanks are like night and day. If you want to check it out, go see scorchedtanks.com, www.scorchedtanks.com. Go check that out. It'll be up for a little while. There's going to be some downtime as I'm moving the server. But go check it out. It is going to be possibly the ultimate recreation. And I only touch this in the emulation news because it kind of falls into that Amiga emulation thing. Anyway, you'll be happy to know that I've been talking with the author at length, and he's actually got versions running on the Mac OS, which, frankly, I could care less about. But on the good note, he does have it running on Linux, which I think would be of very much interest to my listening audience. And the nice thing is he believes he'll be able to get network play going between all three platforms. So no matter what OS you've got, hopefully he'll port it to BIOS too, or the BOS. That'd be great. Once we have that going on, that'll rock, man. That'll be just too cool. Anyway, go check it out, www.scorchedtanks.com. Now on to MAME. MAME has made some interesting leaps and strides over the last few releases. I already mentioned a lot of the bug fixes, like Frontline seems to be functional now, which is groovy, APB. A lot of the games that we've been waiting for fixes have now come of age. Along with that, MAME has actually managed to unlock a couple of other of my favorite games, which I'd almost forgotten about, including Pit Fighter, which a lot of people go, Pit Fighter sucks, wow. But in all actuality, Pit Fighter was almost the precursor to Mortal Kombat, which actually brought digitized video gaming into the industry. And whether you like the game or not, you got to respect it. Along with that, let's also talk about what I call the Simpsons genre of games. The Simpsons has been one of the games that people have wanted for a long, long time, along with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. There's a whole slew of games that run on the Simpsons basic hardware. I believe Aliens, Batman, there's a few more in there. Anyway, they're all emulated, and they run great on MAME. I mean, truly great. All the speech is there. The game seems to be nice, fast, and fluid, even on my Celeron 300. So you got to take your hats off to them for that. There's also been a number of other changes, but mainly the Simpsons genre has been the big thing. We also finally got some cleaner samples from Mario Brothers that superseded my crappy ripped with a micro cassette recorder version. And there's some other new MAME sample sets floating around like Star Trek. Beta 3 just came out of version 0.36 just a day or two before the show here recorded. So you may want to pick that up. The Windows version, the official Windows version, is a few steps behind that. Oh, one more thing I want to bring up on the emulation front. The Amiga emulation scene has been missing something very vital, a working version of Deluxe Galaga. And those of you who played Deluxe Galaga on the Amiga know exactly how cool of a game it is. Probably one of the coolest incarnations of Galaga ever made. And not because it's so accurate, but because it takes the general premise of Galaga and just adds some incredible stuff to it. Meteor storms, all sorts of other different extras, money to buy power-ups. I mean, take your modern day Super Raiden-like super shoot 'em up, and then degrade it back to Galaga level. Mix the two of them, and you got Deluxe Galaga, and it's wonderful. Unfortunately, up until now, we haven't been able to find an Amiga emulator that would play it right because the collision detections were broken, which means you can't pick up any money, you can't die, you can't pick up any weapons or any of that other stuff, which really sucked. But the new version of Fellow version 0.34, which is available at AmigaEmulation.com, will allow you to play the Deluxe Galaga, and it seems to be a perfect working set. You can also pick up the disk image for Deluxe Galaga off of AmigaEmulation.com as well. Okay, now that we got the emulation update out of the way, let's move on to the 8-bit flashback. It's time for an 8-bit flashback. I've actually had quite a few requests to do this game for 8-bit flashback, and finally I'm getting around to doing it. Of course, I did have to take about a 2-hour break before I started recording again because I couldn't stop playing the damn thing. The game, of course, if you recognize the music at the beginning, was Bruce Lee from Datasoft. Now, there were a number of different games on the C64 that were the multiple screen, run, jump, gather sort of games. Games like Spelunker and Mr. Robot, and there was just tons and tons and tons. Jet Set Willy, a lot of the weird, freaky Euro games like Jet Set Willy and some of the other ones. There's been a whole bunch of the multiple screen running around, but there was something about Bruce Lee, and we're going to start running the screenshots here, that made it extraordinary. The controls were well defined. Basically, your goal is to go through different levels collecting these little lanterns. As you collected your quota of lanterns for each level, a secret door somewhere would open that would take you off of that level and onto the next one. Always trying to thwart your quest is this little black ninja guy and this big giant-ass green sumo wrestler dude. That's what I assume he is. You know, the C64 graphics definitely leave something open to interpretation. But as you progress in levels, it becomes a little more tenacious. On level 1, basically you got the green guy and the black guy, and they try to kick your butt, but that's about all there is for environmental hazards. But as you go on, there are other little pitfalls. swords hanging down from the ground, or coming up from the ground, hanging from the ceiling, numerous different obstacles, and moving deadly doorways. That seems to be a real popular one. It'll kill you, basically, if you touch one of these fields. Anyway, you've got your basic punch, kick, running kick, jump, and climbing abilities to help assist you throughout the game. The music and the sound effects are pretty good for the time, and I know, based on the amount of mail I've got, fan mail from people who wanted to see this game reviewed or brought back in the 8-bit flashback, that I'm not the only one that this game has kept entertained for many, many hours. The wide variety of terrain and different levels that you get really make it a step or two above your standard platformer. I did play a lot of games similar to this, like Ultimate Wizard, which is reviewed in another episode of Retro Radio. The run and jump games seem to be a very popular genre on the C64. This one definitely stood out and about of the rest of them. The game, of course, again, is Bruce Lee, and I should have had a few snapshots going on. This one that's really kind of hard to review. I don't really have a lot of stories for you with relation to it, other than the fact that I spent many, many hours playing the damn thing. And as I recall, it had some pretty gruesome protection on it. But not to disappoint my many fans that wanted a Bruce Lee flashback, well, here you have it. This, once again, goes out to show game manufacturers and people out there interested in, writing the next big game, games don't have to be flashy. Games don't have to be have full-motion video clips between every level. Games don't have to be graphically stunning using the latest voodoo technology in order to be fun, in order to keep the player's interest. Like I said, I just went back and played it for like 2 hours before I recorded the flashback. It's simply that enveloping. I have lots of other games I still have flashbacks to do. You can expect to see in the future Raid on Bungling Bay, which is still one of my all-time favorite C64 games. I'm surprised I haven't reviewed it already. The Great Fort Apocalypse, which those of you who know Fort Apocalypse know exactly what I'm talking about the ultimate in gripping for video games. Plus, I got a lot more. I'd like to do Aztec Challenge and Caverns of Kafka someday. And so there's going to be plenty left to do. And eventually, I'm probably going to expand the 8-bit flashback to the 16-bit flashback and include some of the classic Amiga games in this whole foray. So that's what we have to look forward to. Fear not, though, this segment of the show will always be around. I'd like to close the show discussing a little bit about my current project, which is the Retro Radio Collector Edition Archive CD-ROM. A lot of folks have been asking for this over the last 6 or 8 months, especially those of us poor folks with dial-up connections. Would like to have a CD containing all the Retro Radio episodes to date. Well, your prayers have been answered because I went ahead and started this project about a month and a half ago. And one thing that I always wanted to reassure myself, if I did release a Retro Radio CD-ROM, that it wasn't going to be just a directory stuffed full of Real Player G2 files, but a full-blown deal with a nice interface and lots of extras, the sort of thing that I would want to see if I were buying a CD. So I've been negotiating with a couple of different companies, namely the good folks at Buckner and Garcia, the Pac-Man Fever soundtrack folks, and, of course, my good buddies over at Digital Leisure, to work out not only a very clean, easy-to-use interface for finding and playing back your favorite Retro Radio episodes, but also to include some great footage, some video clips, some audio clips, and even some digital audio, actual music CD audio tracks on the CD that you could take your Retro Radio CD-ROM with you and play it in your car or at a friend's house and listen to some of the great classic music and stuff from our day. Buckner and Garcia graciously made a 3-song, about 4-minute mix of their Pac-Man Fever CD. That's going to be included as an audio track right on the CD-ROM. Also, Digital Leisure finally gave me permission, they had to talk to the powers that be, gave me permission to include the audio of all 3 attract modes of Dragon's Lair, Dragon's Lair 2, and Space Ace. That's the part like on Dragon's Lair where it's like, Dragon's Lair, a fantasy adventure where you become a valiant knight. That part, that whole part, the entire track mode of all 3 games are going to be 3 different audio tracks on the CD. So you're going to be able to play these in your car and your music CD player. Digital Leisure also flagged me permission to offer some video clips and some other clips from their Dragon's Lair and Space Ace DVD-ROMs, plus some promotional graphics. And the Buckner and Garcia guys sent over some graphics as well. So it's going to be a good CD. There's going to be lots of players. For those people who may not have the latest players, you'll be able to get those. I will include the MP3 versions of the few shows that I did do in MP3. And there'll be some other goodies on there. So you're getting a full meal deal for your $9.95 U.S. delivered to your door Retro Radio CD-ROM. These are home burn CDs, folks. So if your CD player or CD-ROM does not like burns, you may reconsider ordering the Retro Radio CD. I am taking orders on the website, or I was taking orders up until the 20th. I'd like to close taking orders now because I am moving, and I'd rather not have your order out in hiatus right now. As of the 1st, I will be posting a new address, the 1st of September, that you can order the Retro Radio CD. Those of you who have paid, who have already ordered, there's about 4 or 5 people who are ready to get theirs. I will be shipping your CD before I move. The CD is basically done. I'm just waiting to see if the Space Ace DVD video actually gets here in time for me to include some footage from that. But either way, you folks will have your CDs shipped before the 26th. And I want to thank you folks who have supported this. Retro Radio CD-ROM is basically a non-for-profit. After the media and the time to duplicate it and the postage, I'm not really making a big sum of cash on this, folks. This is more of a customer service thing. And I appreciate those of you who are kind enough to actually want the CD. It makes me feel good. It gives me the drive to continue making the Retro Radio show. And I'm hoping once I get down to Arizona and things mellow out a little bit, I'll be able to get more and more Retro Radio shows out quicker. And if you have an idea, if you have a segment of Retro Radio you'd like to see added, aside from like a Super Nintendo section or something like that, if you have something you'd like to see added to Retro Radio, please let me know. I'd love to hear from you. My address, of course, is webmaster@MonroeWorld.com. Last thing I'd like to bring up is we are going to be moving our main server, which houses Monroe World, the V. Merlin site, the Amiga Emulation Zone, the Cynthia Rothrock, the David Carradine site. Every site basically that I work on is going to be down for about 3 or 4 days while we move the server and we get all the DNS entries changed and all that other stuff. So do not fear. Monroe World has not been owned or pulled down by some organization. We are simply shifting to a faster, better server that's going to be more conducive to moving. Anyway, folks, I think that's going to wrap this episode up of Retro Radio. I appreciate, as always, your tuning in. I'd love to hear from you via email, your comments on the show and on Monroe World. I want to make it a better place for you and me. And please feel free to write. Until next time, this is Shane R. Monroe from Retro Radio and MonroeWorld.com saying, until next time, keep it retro.